What is going on, guys? So about 5 years ago, I left to go to Fort Benning, Georgia for basic training. And since then, I've made hundreds and hundreds of videos on basic training. So in this video, I'm gonna cover some of the things that have changed about basic training since I actually went 5 years ago. So like I said, 5 years ago, I left to go to basic training. I went to Fort Benning. I'm not infantry. I joined as a 25 Bravo, which is an information technology specialist. But you don't have to just be infantry to go to Fort Benning, Georgia. So I'm not infantry, went to Fort Benning. But all the different basic trainings are supposedly roughly the same. So just keep that in mind. But all this time has gone by. 5 years later, I was sitting here thinking of a video to make. And there's just a lot of changes that have happened with basic training, since I joined. I saw a comment on one of my videos that was asking about my blue phase video, one of my first videos that I made about the Army, and it was asking if this was the forge and whatnot. And so that gave me the real idea to do this video, because there are some videos that I've made that are pretty much outdated. There's not a lot of them, because a lot of the concepts, the topics, the tips videos that I've talked about, those are pretty much just going to be the same throughout however many years. But there are some very specific topic videos that I've done, mainly the first ones that I did, where I talk about what I did day to day at basic training, what white phase, red phase, blue phase, all that stuff. What was it like? What did we do? Things like that are going to change through time. And so I wouldn't say that this is all of the changes that have taken place, because I haven't gone through basic training again. You don't ever go through basic training twice unless you fail it for some reason, but you're not gonna go through it again. So from what I have seen, from what I've read, from what I've heard, from talking to other people, and I do want to find out some of this information firsthand. I'm kind of working on going to a basic training class and kind of shadowing them, recording things, and get some more up-to-date information for you guys on these specific things that I'm going to talk about. But with that being said, these are going to be some of the main things that have changed in the past 5 years. The first big thing that's changed is I'm pretty sure it is a requirement. Like, you basically flunk out of basic training if you show up to basic training and you don't have your Matt Ward tee. So I just want to throw that out there. One of these, it'll be perfectly fine. The link is down in the description down below. Use code WARD10 for 10% off. And if you show up to basic training in your Matt Ward tee, you're going to pass. If you don't, you're going to fail. So that's just the first thing I want to point out. But the next thing that I want to point out that is a very big change that I got to throw out there is that infantry basic training isn't 14 weeks anymore. It's 22 weeks. I wasn't infantry, so I didn't go to infantry basic training, so I'm not going to talk about some of the specifics with that. I'm just going to talk about overall basic training, but that is a really big change that has happened, and again, I'm looking to get some more information on that for you guys coming up here in the future. So that's number one big change. The next biggest, by far the biggest, just leading it off here with the biggest change by far that has happened, is the forge. I don't know if you guys have heard about the forge, if you know what the forge is, but whenever I went to basic training, the forge was not the thing. We didn't do the forge. We just did 3 different FTXs. We did 3 different field training exercises, and the forge now is essentially a culmination of a bunch of different things that you have learned throughout basic training. I believe you take it, or you go do the forge, you do your little FTX and stuff around week 7, I believe is when that is. So it's the beginning of blue phase. Now, when we did our final FTX, whenever I was at basic training, it was mainly just like platoon exercises. It was what I just think of as a field training exercise. The forge right now is a lot of rucking combined with what like I just said, with the field training exercise. You're gonna have platoon tactics. You might do a couple little, rotations, do some sticks lanes, and do like an ambush or react to contact, things like that. You might do a little patrol. These are some different things that you're gonna be doing, so you don't have to worry too much about the details on like what's a recon, what is an ambush, what is, all these different things, Don't worry about that. In addition to what they used to do with the FTX, that is now included with the forge, you're gonna be doing more ruck marching. That is the number one huge big thing, is you're gonna be doing a lot more rucking than I did whenever I joined. I would say at least double. Whatever I did is gonna be at least double of what you do at basic training now. And you also do land navigation. I believe you shoot some as well in the forge, and you do some like hand grenade stuff. So there's a lot of different events that are packed into the forge. Whereas before, whenever I was in, if you go back and watch some of my super old videos, then in those videos we kind of space those out throughout basic training. With the new way is, from what I understand, again, I haven't gone through basic training again, you kind of learn a lot of that as you go, and then the forage again is the culmination of all those events that you've been learning, that you've been practicing. And at the end, you're gonna have what is known as the soldier ceremony. They didn't have that whenever I first joined. And that is essentially where at the end of the forage, you're gonna put on your beret for the first time, even though technically you're gonna have already worn it and shaped it and stuff, but officially the first time as a soldier completing the forage. And so that's gonna be a cool little event that you're gonna do at the end of the forage. They didn't have that before. For us, it was like at the end of that 16K ruck march, you know, they had some smoke, they had some guns, they had a whole bunch of stuff like that, and that was really the only like celebratory thing that we had. And I mean, of course, there's gonna be more things that are different pertaining to that, but essentially the forge is a huge change for basic training in the past 5 years. The next thing that is obviously big, basic training and Army-wide, is whenever I joined, it was the APFT and now it is the ACFT. So it's the 6 different events versus the previous push-ups, sit-ups, and 2-mile run. So that's gonna be just different Army-wide, but if you're going to basic training right now, you should expect to be doing the ACFT. But in regards to the PT test that you take, now basic training, they are a little bit more strict on you. Actually, I'll probably say a lot more strict on your physical fitness whenever you first get to basic training. And I've done a video on this, and just make sure, guys, that you are in your best possible physical conditioning that you can be in before going to basic training. Before, whenever I was in, whenever I first joined anyways, you had to take the PT test. It was a 50-50-50 PT test, which was actually lower than the Army standard. And so you would take that at basic training and people would still fail and they would flunk and they would just do absolutely horrible. And you know, they would just keep on pushing. And as long as you pass that one PT test during basic training, which is still the same, if you pass one ACFT at basic training, you're gonna be good to go. But again, before it was a lower standard than the Army standard. And from what I understand, it's still going to be the same ACFT standard with a new PT test that the rest of the Army is going to have. So you're going to make sure that you're looking at the new ACFT, looking at different events and practicing it, and or at least practicing what you can do on your own right now, so you're not super surprised when you get to basic training. And again, another physical aspect change about basic is, like I said, they're more strict. So for us, again, if you couldn't do any push-ups, if you were running like a 30-minute, 2-mile run before, they might, being like, okay, we're just gonna work on that, you're gonna improve. But now they're gonna be a lot more strict on stopping your basic training progression. You're gonna show up to basic training, you're gonna be super out of shape, and then be like, okay, no, you can't continue on right here. You're gonna have to go over here for a couple of weeks until you get in more shape and better shape, and then you can start the basic training process over again. So you're not gonna get too far into basic training before this happens. They're gonna pretty much stop you right off the gate, or right out the gate whenever you take that first ACFT. So again, make sure you are good on your PT before you go to basic training, because if not, it's gonna prolong your graduation because you're gonna get held back for a couple of weeks. So that's gonna be a lot more common now than it was back whenever I first joined. Now, the next thing that is new to basic training, and some of these things that I'm about to say are going to change continually. So keep this in mind, guys. Like every cycle that basic training has, there is an AAR, there's an after action review where the soldiers are going to be submitting reviews and being like, this was good, this was bad, we need to change this, we don't need to change that. I mean, one big thing that was a contention of concern whenever I was at basic was chocolate milk. And it's like, how much chocolate milk should soldiers be having? How much, all this, like, should we be limiting them to 1 glass of milk, or we should be trying to have them have 2 glasses of milk? Like, there's gonna be minor changes like that, but then there's also gonna be these big changes that are gonna be happening just periodically. Things are just constantly testing. So for me as a YouTuber, definitely need to make sure I'm keeping up on that. But as for you guys, make sure you're talking to somebody who might have gone to basic training very recently, or make sure if you are talking to somebody who joined 10 years ago, that you're kind of taking what they say about specific events with a grain of salt, because some things are going to change in specifics. But basically, like I said, things are going to be changing. And as far as I know, right now, what I heard recently is the hand grenade and land navigation is not necessarily a strict requirement like it used to be. So if you failed hand grenades, if you failed land navigation before, you could not graduate from basic training. Yes, you would get the chance to retest back whenever I was at basic training, and for events where it's a requirement, now you're going to get the opportunity to retest. But as far as I know right now, it is not a requirement. However, I would say for land navigation, that is still something that you should definitely focus on and definitely be proficient at that. Hand grenades, it's not really rocket science. It's really not that big of a deal. Don't know why that would be a huge requirement anyways. If you do it a few times, you kind of get the muscle memory down a little bit. It's not all that complicated. Land navigation is going to be important, you know, throughout your career. You know, you're going to look, you know, pretty much stupid if you can't do land navigation. So make sure you know land navigation. And I do want to point out that land navigation and hand grenades is a requirement for infantry. So if you're not infantry, it's not a requirement as far as I know. And if you are infantry, it is a requirement. So keep that in mind. Got to make sure I throw that in there because some people might go to infantry basic and be like, oh, I didn't know this was a requirement. So just make sure you guys know land navigation. Again, my land navigation video is pretty much on point with what you need to pass basic training. And then the next thing that I want to talk about that is new to Army basic training, and this was like a big Facebook controversy with a whole bunch of prior service military people being like, oh, the Army soft, basic training soft, all this stuff. And that was the patches that you get at basic training. Now, if you go to basic training, you know, I think after red phase is what it is, you get your little US Army patch, and there was this whole big thing. It's like, oh my gosh, this is, you know, softening up our soldiers and all that. So that's gonna be a new thing for us. You could not wear a unit patch whenever you were in base training. Like, you didn't get any patches. The only patches you got were the leadership patches, the ones that look like all the different enlisted ranks that show you what leadership level somebody is in basic training, and that's basically it. Now you get patches. It's, you know, it's whatever, you know, you can have an argument for not wanting to reward people for not actually completing basic training because they're giving these out before you actually finish basic training. So there's an argument for that, but at the same time, it's not a basic training changing like thing like the forges, or like changing different requirements, or changing up how they do things. Like, apparently they do a little bit more combatives now than they used to, right? So that's one of those things that changes. They used to have you be certified in combatives level 1 before, and then whenever I joined, that wasn't a requirement, and now they're trying to make it a requirement again. So there's gonna be things like that that are changing all the time, and I'm not gonna cover everything in this video. Again, I do want to go to basic training, record some stuff, see for myself some of those physical changes that have happened, talk to some drill sergeants about some changes that they've noticed, and then bring that information to you guys. So make sure you guys subscribe and do all that, and stay tuned for that coming up in the future, and also cross your fingers and hope that it happens, because that would be freaking awesome. But that is gonna be it for this video. Hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, hit that like button, that would be awesome. If you want to check out some more of my videos like I just talked about, hit that subscribe button, that would be even better. And if you really don't want to miss them, hit the notification bell button. That just ensures that you don't miss them, and it really just makes my day. Follow me on Instagram and Snapchat if you haven't already. Hope you guys have an amazing freaking day, and I'll see y'all later.